Very good evening, dear students. Uh, I'm using this mode to begin with the 16th century as we have wasted almost 3-4 days. So I just thought that at least let's have a beginning. So after 13th, 14th and 15th century, we move on to the 16th century. And 16th century can generally or widely be divided into two parts. That is the early Renaissance, that is from 1485 to 1560. Early Renaissance is also known as the first half of 16th century. Okay, that is the other name for the early Renaissance. And the second part that we can call this divide this particular age, 16th century, into is the Elizabethan age from 1558 to 1603. And the other name for the Elizabethan age is the flowering of the Renaissance. Now, as always, the same pattern you've studied in 14th and the 15th century. As far as 16th century is concerned, we will first discuss the social background. Now, to begin with, the most important aspect of the 16th century have been the Renaissance and the Reformation. Renaissance is a revival of learning. This is what you have to, or rebirth of learning, right? And Reformation, it was a movement related to religion, of course, and it changed the very existence of the English society. Why? Because what happened? The domination of church came to an end with this movement. Okay, so broadly we'll be talking about these two aspects. So first, let us see the meaning of Renaissance. Now, Renaissance is a French word which means rebirth. Okay, it is a French word which means rebirth, revival, or reawakening. So the Renaissance was both a revival of the ancient classic mythology, literature and culture, as well as reawakening. So please remember this also. Reawakening of what? Reawakening of the human mind, right? After the long sleep of the dark Middle Ages. And what happened after that? The glory and the beauty of the human body and the world of nature. So this was revived when the 16th century came and when Renaissance was started. It was a rediscovery by mankind of himself and of the world. So where did it start? It started in Italy as early as the 14th century, and it started with Petrarch and others, and was greatly stimulated by the fall of Constantinople. Now, this is a very significant event as far as Renaissance. Constantinople. ये आपको याद रहनी चाहिए date, never forget it. Okay, as far as Renaissance is concerned. Now let me just finish Renaissance and I'll come back to fall of Constantinople. So how it was stimulated, that I'll tell you. I will just repeat this. So it began in Italy with Petrarch in the 14th century and was stimulated by the fall of Constantinople. What happened then? There was invention of printing press in Germany about this very time, and there's some great discoveries by scientists and navigators also happened during this particular time. Okay, its influence reached England as late as the last years of the 15th century, and the opening years of the 16th century is reached its full flowering in the age of Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth, that is the second part which I told you, that the अभी हम किस बारे में बात करें? We are talking about the early 16th century, and obviously when Queen Elizabeth was the ruler, that is your second half of the 16th century. Okay, that is the second half. Now, what was the fall of Constantinople? The fall of Constantinople, it was the capture of the capital of Byzantine Empire. इस empire को capture किया था. Fall of Constantinople. Okay. That is Romans, of course. By whom? By an invading army of the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire. On 29th May 1453. So, conquest of Constantinople followed 53-day siege. The war continued almost. There was 53-day of siege that had begun on which day? Yeah, 29th May को capture कर लिया था. But the siege had started on 6th April 1453. So remember, 53-day siege. And what was it? The capture of the Roman Empire by the Ottoman Empire. Okay, this is what you must remember as far as Renaissance is concerned. Its beginning in the 14th century and its connection with Petrarch and the fall of Constantinople. So what we have to remember? We have to remember this, that when Renaissance happened, there were inventions, there were discoveries, there were voyages, which all somehow or the other influenced literature of that particular age. Okay. Now, let us see the next aspect. So, this was the first aspect as far as the social background is concerned, the Renaissance and the Reformation. Reformation will deal in detail as an exclusive topic. For now, you just need to know what Reformation is. Next comes the narrow medieval world. This medieval world was curiously limited and it was narrow. It was limited. How it was limited? Narrow, I'm saying it was limited. It was limited spiritually. It was limited intellectually. And it was limited physically. Okay. Geographically, also the boundaries were narrow. Right? And astronomically, again, its boundaries were fixed. Intellectually, it was limited by the fact that all the books were written by hand, and so the literary culture was confined to only a few people. And what we have read, the literary culture was mostly confined to the people of the church, that is the clergy people. Spiritually, it was confined within the bounds of Catholic orthodoxy, which nobody could question, and by scholastic philosophy. So it was too much. The medieval world was too much in bounds. There were so many limitations as far as this particular age was concerned. Particular age means the medieval world. 15th century, पिछले की बात कर रहे हैं हम, ठीक है? Because as I told you about the law of alternate tendencies, when things go bizarre at one particular age, then slowly and steadily events take such a turn that things begin to change. Okay. So next is the decay of the medieval world, which you can also call the revival of एंशियंट लर्निंग. जब हम भी एंशियंट लर्निंग की जहाँ भी बात करेंगे ना, इट सिंपली मीन्स कि हम इटालियंस और ग्रीक्स की बात कर रहे हैं. उनके कल्चर से हमने सीखा. ग्रीक्स एंड इटालियंस, दे केम टू इंग्लैंड एंड देयर दे ब्रॉट देयर बुक्स विच वॉज सर्कुलेटेड, विच वॉज read by the people of England, and that is how things changed. That was how the revival of ancient learning began. So as early as the 14th century, narrow world had begun to decay. So पहले हमने narrow world की बात करी. Now we are talking about the decay of this narrow world. It was especially in Italy where the study of Greek literature had been revived, and there was a keen interest being taken in the humanistic culture of ancient Greece and Rome. ये है ancient learning. There was an attempt to rebuild medieval culture according to the इसको बोलते हैं Greco-Roman pattern of life. So basically imitating their way of life. The study of humanism or humanity received a great stimulus from the fall of Constantinople to the Turks in 19 Ottoman Empire था Turks का, ठीक है, in the year 1453. While the ancient literature had been practically lost to the Western world, it still flourished in the eastern part of the Roman Empire with its capital at Constantinople. At the fall of Constantinople, countless Greek scholars they poured into Italy and sought its shelter. वहाँ पे they started staying in Italy, Greek scholars. And what did they bring with them? They brought scripts, manuscripts of ancient writers. They classical masterpieces fired the imagination of the Italian scholars. And it was felt that this particular Greco-Roman pattern was more modern than their own, and that their own culture should be reconstructed according to this idea. Constructed according to this particular pattern, to their ideals. Then the invention of the printing press multiplied book and carried the fruits of classical renaissance to the people at large in the various countries of Europe. Okay, so I hope you are learning that how the decay happened and how there was a typical following of the Greco-Roman pattern of living also. तो living में literature भी आ जाता है and life भी आ जाता है. Okay. Next is the widening of horizons. How, horizons are various spheres, various areas. How it was, how the options came. In Italy, the Renaissance was not merely a literary revival. It was scientific as well as artistic revival. Okay? It gave man a new idea of life and morals. The geographical and astronomical methods of ancients were also revived. Astronomers, big names, Copernicus and Galileo. Galileo discovered telescope, rediscovered the spherical shape of the earth and that it moved around the sun, and further that it was not the center of the universe. So these were the astronomers who came at that time. And man was spiritually liberated and free thinking was stimulated. ये बड़ा important है ना, इस चीज़ को मत भूलिएगा. हमने यहाँ बताया कि यहाँ पे it was narrow, it was limited, ठीक है, but with the coming of Renaissance, man became spiritually liberated, that is free. He could think, he had the freedom to think himself, about aspects other than described by the clergy in the church. Okay, that is what it means. And then these discoveries, they too played a special role. The discoveries of astronomy suggested to explorers and merchants the possibility of reaching the fabulous wealth of the East by sailing to the unknown West. West was not known. Okay. It was in the last decade of the 15th century, that is 1492. I wonder if you people remember what happened. Columbus discovered India, America. And Vasco da Gama, he had reached India. by sailing through the क्या बोलते हैं हम उसको, Cape of Good Hope. I hope you people have heard about it, the Cape of Good Hope. If not, Google it and see the location on the atlas or on the map, right? So Columbus reached America and Vasco da Gama reached India. So this happened in the year 1942. So the role of discoveries was also very, very significant. So all these aspects of the social background of the 16th century somehow is focused mainly on this aspect. Reformation's a humanistic aspect obviously is there, because people were getting liberated, they were coming out of the dark ages. So what are we focusing on? We are focusing on this, that how Renaissance brought about a rebirth, a revival, a reawakening of learning. Okay, that is what we are studying. So as far as the social background of 16th century is concerned. So to conclude, the immense widenings, that is learning, of man's intellectual, spiritual and physical horizons, which happened because of Renaissance, was result of two impulses. So there were mainly two reasons, which were, number one, inspiration derived from rebirth of classical learning. Classical learning pattern नहीं भूलेंगे हम, Greek and Romans, right? And the stirring of men's imagination by great voyages of discovery. So these are the two main impulses, which were a result of Renaissance, which widened man's intellectual, spiritual and physical horizon. So this is the whole conclusion as far as the social background of 16th century is concerned. And these two impulses, these twin threads, ran through all the Renaissance. It ran through all Renaissance literature. So the marks of these discoveries, these voyages, this spiritual liberty, this physical liberty, this geographical liberty was felt in the works of Renaissance literature. Okay, I hope I have given you a little background as far as the 16th century, the social background of the 16th century is concerned. Now next we will take up the Renaissance in English. अभी हमने इटली की बात करी है. How the Renaissance in English, how it the influence it reached England, and what were the factors that shaped it. That will be our next topic. So please, I try to grab what I have just made you understand in this particular tutorial, and try to understand the things. These are the main aspects. This conclusion is the main aspect. Okay. Thank you so much.